What is it that you like about being autistic? And what is it that you don't like about being autistic? I can imagine that this list is actually never ending, really, because as I started to explore what I liked and didn't like about being autistic, the problem that I came into was that many things did not actually fully sit into either side of the weighing scales. Like, when I truly thought about them, even the things that are bad had a positive connotation, and the things that was good also had a negative connotation. But again, I'm not too sure whether that is just because of the way that I think, and maybe that is an exclusively me problem, but I have to think of multiple layers of everything. So I'm always back and forward. Like, I'm never, do you know when they say that I know that a lot of autistic people don't like these sort of sayings, but when they say you can't see the wood for the trees, I feel like I'm never even in the forest. I'm always just above it, observing everything permanently, and I'm always considering the back, the forth, the under, the over, constantly. Does anybody else relate to that? Anyway, I did come up with some things of four of my favourite things that had less negatives, and four of the negatives that had less positives. Anyway, let's dive into it. But before I do, anybody who is coming back, welcome back. I really appreciate you coming and viewing my content and being part of this community. For anybody new, hi, I am Jade from JMS Wellbeing. I am an autistic private therapist, and this is my beautiful healing space. And I make content about mental health, thought-provoking, interesting discussion topics, and also on autism. If that is something that you're interested in, please do stick around. So, the first thing that I feel like, I'm going to start with the things that I don't like. So the first thing that I find really difficult is having interoception and processing delays. And the reason why I feel like this is a big problem for me personally is because it causes me so many problems later down the line, because I've not been able to pick up on the signaling of my body, and I'm not necessarily processing the information in the moment. So I've come into, on many of occasions, a complete burnout and stop, where I'm having a very physical reaction to my overwhelm, to my discomfort, but it's not happening in the moment that it's happening after my body is just pretty much saying it can't cope anymore. So this could look like, so something that's been happening for the last couple of months is this side of my face begins to swell up, and it begins to start to rash up. And that sounds like some sort of allergy problem, but I know it isn't, because I literally don't eat anything different, and I haven't used anything different, and there's a whole bunch of things that I've looked into, and I know that that's not the case. Plus, after a key event is over and I'm beginning to process it, it just completely goes down. And again, that's just one of them. Another one can be that I get excruciating migraines that do not even last days, they last weeks. I get memory loss. I am unable to literally stay awake for normal periods of time. So everybody knows, if they know me, that sleep is a huge element of something that I struggle with. But just going through the day, so an example is actually currently right now I am in a place where I am recovering from key events that most people can just do without any problem whatsoever, but I have to factor in my recovery from them. So I've recently just had a sleep on my dinner break before I go back into client work, and it helps with the brain fog. It helps with this potential of having that delayed response to the overwhelm of just life, interaction, sensory information. So yeah, I would say that that's the first one that I find really difficult. Does anybody else have that experience? I'd be really interested. Also, I'd like to hear from you on what you all feel like is the most difficult aspects for you, and what you think are the most beneficial aspects for you. And the second one, again, for me personally, would be the predisposition that I've had to trauma and mental health. And again, I'm not in the same place with this, and thank God, because I now know myself, and obviously being a mental health practitioner, being a counsellor, being in the kind of private sector and doing all the intentional healing and work myself, I am very able to keep on top of this to a degree that I never was previously. However, I think that we naturally have a predisposition to just being and suffering a lot more than the average person. And for years I suffered with this, and I just did not see a light at the end of the tunnel with it. And I experienced trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and I just couldn't see that I would ever have a way out of that space. And don't get me wrong, anxiety is still something that I suffer with every day, but depression I am able to definitely keep at bay for most part. However, I do understand for anybody who is experiencing that, just how debilitating that is and how hard it is to get out of and how hard it is to get on top of and begin to manage. Number 3 would be the fluctuating capacity. It is so infuriating to me that I can't do the same thing that I did yesterday, and I just want to, and I can't see why I can't, and why was it possible then and it's not possible now. And having that, like I spoke about, having that brain fog, and I have a regression of speech where I have to start to begin to really slow down and think about what it is that I want to say, and I didn't need to do that yesterday, for example. I find that extremely difficult too. And number 4 would be, and again, I wasn't too sure where to put this one, but I added it to the list anyway, which is the relationship breakdowns that I have due to my overbearing and strong sense of justice, right and wrong, and moral code. I find that if somebody is in my life and they do something that I deem as unforgivable and not something that I would do, the consequence of that is very much that I will cut them out of my life. And although for the most part that is not problematic, and what I mean by that is I have done that with people that I have had no regrets for doing that with, because of whatever it is that they're displaying that I think is unforgivable, or something that and again, I say this where I'm not like, I don't just cut them off at first instance, but I give them an opportunity to understand why I don't like that thing. And if that thing does not change, then the way that I set the boundaries, that I say that I'm not participating in that anymore. And like I say, the reason I didn't know where to put this is because for the most part, it's been positive. However, I also understand that things bother me to a degree that don't bother my husband, for example. He's very laid back, he's very forgiving, and I imagine that easygoing forgiveness type, it lives in the body so much easier than the way that my body operates and the way that my mind operates. And I would love, in so many respects, to have some of the qualities that my husband has, where he is just able to just think, no big deal, I can forget about that. That won't bother me until a lot further down the line. And I think that's the reason why I put it onto my list. And I have also made a huge error a couple of years ago where, because of this reason, and because my relationships do tend to break down under these circumstances, not every relationship, but certain relationships have, I cut off somebody really significant and important to me. And luckily for me, we have rectified that since, and we've been really honest, which again, I think is a great thing about autism, that I don't feel comfortable skirting around the issue or pretending. We need to just get directly to what happened and what we can take accountability for and move forward with, and we both have done that since. However, if that hadn't have happened, I do think that although I have always said I don't have regrets, I think I would have regret that one seriously. I think that I would have lived wondering, because of how important that person is and was to me. The things that I like about being autistic. Again, I want to say that this list is not exhaustive and it's not everything that I could think of, but these are the ones that I, at the time, through going through my list, are the ones that I put at the top. So something that I really like is my monotropic thinking. If people don't know what monotropic thinking is, please do have a look into it because it's super interesting, and I will possibly do a video on it too if anybody wants me to. But my monotropic thinking is I might not, it's this analogy that you either have like almost a spotlight thinking, which is what most neurotypical people do, or you have like a flashlight, which is monotropic, which is almost what a lot of autistic people do. People might go, but you don't get to illuminate all information, and that is true. However, you also get to have narrow focus, and you will be able to, when you do have narrow focus and you do focus on something, you'll focus on it to a deeper degree than what the average person does. And again, I have so many theories on this, so I will probably make content on this in more detail, which is not for this video. But I love this. I love this about myself. I previously, again, this is why I was like, which one do I put it under? I previously hated it because at school it meant that I could not access the information it was giving me. But then as I moved through education, it's the exact reason why I ended up with a first class honours degree, but I was seen as stupid in primary school, because when I have such an area of interest in something, the depths in which I learn that, and my thirst for that knowledge and wanting to know more about that never ends. Like, it's lifelong, which I will go into as well in a moment. And I want to know more and more, and I don't want to know what the average person knows. I want to know that and more, and I want to far surpass that, and I want to come up with conclusions, and I want to create new information based off the things that I've discovered. And it's very linear, I get that, but it's also very beneficial, because I guess we discover new things in that mind frame of monotropic thinking. Does anybody understand what I mean by that? My second one would be needing to create an internal rule book and having an understanding of the whys of something. I've always needed to understand it to a deep degree why something happens, and I can't just have like a surface level answer. I have to have a deeper level of understanding, and I've spent my life, I guess unbeknownst to me now, but very much consciously, and I'm aware of this now, that I've been creating a rule book and a framework to live by, where am I happy with my outcome if I do that one thing every time? And I like this actually about myself. I like the fact that I don't do something mindlessly. I do it almost mechanically, consciously, and with reason. And if somebody was to question me, I'd be able to tell them exactly why I do it. I will probably also be able to tell them the array of reasons why somebody else is doing X, Y, or Z, because of my incessant need to observe and see outcomes and understand frameworks and understand behavioural patterns and understand minds. And again, I think that this is a beneficial thing to me. It helps me understand the whys, and it also helps me help other people understand the whys, which again is really beneficial in my line of work as a private therapist, because I do attract a lot of neurodivergent, but in particular ADHD clientele, who if they don't have a special interest in the area that I do, say for example theirs is in science or theirs is in whatever it's in, and they go, I've never actually been able to have that monotropic thinking in relation to this, why is this happening? And they need to discover that. I can help them access that for themselves, not through my pathway of thinking. And number 3, for the things that I like, is my special interest. Who doesn't? Who does not like their own special interest? Everybody who's autistic, definitely, and everybody in general, if they're interested in something, like it. But I like the degree in which I am interested in it. I can personally say that it's very rare that I've had something that I am obsessively interested in that has not been lifelong. I find that quite incredible. I find that quite incredible for an observational point of view, because I see so many people really struggle to keep that lifelong interest. It tends to fizzle out, or it doesn't seem to have the same impact. They might move on to a new thing, and again, that's fine for them. You know, I don't know how it feels for them until I ask them the question whether it bothers them. But I like that I have had a lifelong interest in behaviour and the mind, and observing people and watching and people watching and wanting to understand people. I love that I've had a lifelong interest in bugs and animals and my connection to the earth. I love that I have always been obsessed with poetry writing and also drawing portraits and drawing things in general, and like trying to challenge myself with that. I love that another one of my interests is that I don't want to be fixed ever. I want to constantly assess and reassess and consider whether I'm limiting myself in some regard to only knowing what I am comfortable knowing. You get what I mean? But even people that I've been interested in, so I always had a huge interest in Will Smith as a kid, and I still to this day have such a strong fondness for him, and it just does not pass. It just does not seem to ever leave me. Tupac is another one. His brain is fascinating to me, his views, and again, I know that it wasn't all like that, and his poetry and the way that he thought, it's fascinating to me, and it's never left me. And the moment that somebody brings it back to my attention, it's like it's a thirst that cannot be quenched. That sounded gross, but you get what I mean. And my last one would be my last favourite one, but it's probably really high up on my list, is my hypersensitivity and my hyper empathy. I didn't choose this. This is not something that I have had to fine tune. It's something that's been there since the moment that I became online and conscious and aware of myself, which was maybe about 2 or 3. I felt to a degree, now I realise, that other people don't. I have such a hypersensitivity to energy that things happen to me and I can do things that I've not seen other people be able to do. And I think that the hyper empathy works really well with boundaries and with protection and with making sure that I look after myself too in my line of work and with my connections to the people that I love. And my hypersensitivity, because of my huge interest in bugs and animals and the earth in general, like I say, my husband really highlighted to me, he's recorded videos of this too, where I can do things that other people can't do. So for example, we went to a butterfly house and I just knew that I could get the butterflies to land on me or not fly away from me. And everybody was trying to obviously do this because that's, all like the reason that they're there. They're interested in interacting. And I just knew that I could, and I did. And I remember we was out on a walk and there was a dragonfly. And I remember saying, just get on my finger. And he thought I was joking and it literally flew onto my finger. And it's because of my sensitivity to energy and understanding things to a degree that is quite hard to put into words. I can move things, not like telekinesis, but like with the energy of me, not with their energy, if that makes sense. Again, hard to explain. I'll try to input some videos to make it make sense. But I have something that I believe is a gift, and nobody else has to believe it's a gift. That's totally okay, but I do, and I find it really beneficial to my connection to the earth and the things that exist in the earth, and my love for all things, whether that is animals, bugs, people, inanimate objects, whatever it might be. I genuinely have an overwhelming care towards them that I just don't think is that common, because I don't mean that people don't care, but what I mean is, 1, to the degree of how I feel it and how I care, and 2, like I said in a previous video, a lot of people's is related to their loyalty or their interest, whereas mine is related to everything universally. So, and it's to do with what I believe is like being fair. And an example of that would be if they prefer dogs, then they might care about the dog, but they might not care about the cat. Or if they have a loved one, they might care about them, like, obviously deeply, which is lovely, but they might not care about the person on the street to a certain degree. I don't have that. I do not have that, but I like that I don't have that, if that makes sense. Anyway, I hope that people found this interesting. I hope that you could relate to some of the things that I said. I also want to know if there are just ones that I haven't included. I would love to hear from you. And speak to you soon. Take care.